Good afternoon. Welcome to Using Change Management and Lean Principles for Better Outcomes with Janina Ostrich and Rachel Jennings. I'm Christy Snow with Results Washington. My pronouns are she, her, and I will be a moderator today. We do have just over 1,000 attendees who have registered for the session, and we are so happy to have you here. I am joined today by Melissa Shaw, who will be providing ASL interpretation, and special thanks to my team member, Kathy Holder, who is managing technology behind the scenes. We know many of you are familiar with Zoom meetings, but there are some differences in Zoom webinar, which is what we're using today. The biggest difference is that you won't be able to talk or have your video visible. This ensures all participants can focus on today's presentation. I want to draw your attention to a few different features in Zoom and how we'll use them. If you move your mouse, this toolbar will appear and you can see icons for the chat and QA. Now, these are two different features. We will be using the chat during a portion of today's presentation, but please keep in mind this is a public record and it will only be monitored during those times. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to drop those in the Q&A box. We won't be able to respond to all the questions, but we will do our best to answer as many as we can. If you experience any technical issues, please use the QA feature for that as well, and we will do our best to help you. Next, you'll notice an icon for closed captioning. If you wish to see closed captioning, click that icon and select Show Subtitle, or you can view the full transcript. You can also adjust your view to make either the presentation or the speaker larger by sliding the vertical bar on your screen from left to right. Session materials are available on our website and videos will be posted within a week. If we get disconnected or run into technical issues, we will try to get the webinar back up and running for about 5 minutes. And in the event we are unable to do so, we will record the session and post that on our website. Finally, at the end of the session, a survey will pop up. Please take the time to complete this survey. This will provide the presenter and us at Results Washington some real-time feedback. We are very fortunate to have Janina and Rachel with us today. Janina is the Planning and Performance Manager for Washington's Division of Child Support. She provides consultation in the use of tools and techniques to provide processes and report outcomes. She has 25 plus years of experience in project management and leadership roles working with both state and federal programs. Janina is a black belt in Lean Six Sigma and is ProSci certified. She has developed and managed a Lean Green Belt certification program since 2016. And Rachel is a Management Analyst 5 for Washington's Division of Child Support. She provides lean process improvement consultations supporting the division's continuous improvement efforts. She has been practicing lean since 2012 and currently helps manage DCS's Green Belt certification program. Rachel is a Lean Six Sigma black belt and a ProSci certified change practitioner. So with that, I will pass over to you ladies.
Thank you, Christy, for that introduction. Good afternoon and welcome to our presentation on using change management and lean principles for better outcomes. As Christy mentioned, my name is Janina Ostrich and I'm the Planning and Performance Manager for the Division of Child Support. With me today is my colleague, Rachel Jennings. Rachel is going to be working the PowerPoint for us, so thank you, Rachel. Rachel, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hello and good afternoon, everyone.
All right, thank you. You'll be hearing more from her a little bit later. Before we get started, we wanted to say a huge thank you to our fabulous hosts, Melissa, our ASL interpreter, and the rest of the Results Washington team that's worked so hard to continue to provide this opportunity for all of us. I personally have had the privilege of attending the conference since it was first created back in 2012 and feel so fortunate to be able to present to you all today. The effort that they have put in every year to adapt and flex and grow has been truly inspiring. No matter what the barriers, they find a way to make it work. So thanks also to all of you that have signed up for this session today. I know it's really hard on the last day to stay engaged, but we appreciate your attention and we hope that you'll leave today with a couple of takeaways from our time together. As we go through our presentation, we will be turning on the chat feature from time to time to get your input. And we'll also invite you to play along by helping us to complete some of the templates we've created using a real work example, a little hands-on practical application just to get you started. All right, on to the session. Like a lot of you out in the audience, we are still fairly young when it comes to our lean journey at the Division of Child Support, even though we've been adapting and adopting lean principles since 2013. And even though it feels like we've been doing it for a really long time and acknowledge that we've embraced a lot of the lean tools and a much more methodical process for problem solving, we started noticing some gaps and issues when completing the act or adjust step in the PDCA cycle. Somehow, while we were chanting the mantra of it's about the process, not about the people, we got just a little bit lost. We were completing A3s, we were identifying 8 wastes, working on a root cause analysis, and tackling value stream mapping events. But we were struggling when it came time to actually implement the action plan items. And we saw a lot of backsliding into doing the work the same old way. We were getting really frustrated. We didn't know why this was happening, but we were so focused on using the amazing tools that Lean provided us to do better problem solving that we lost focus on the most important part, the people side. We're going to open up the chat for a moment and ask you to share with us if that's happened to any of you in your organizations. I'd love to see if that has happened, and if so, how did that feel? Heck yes. All right, definitely all the time. Yes, it was not good. The tools are wonderful, but the people tend to get lost. It feels discouraging. Leaves me feeling exhausted. I love that one. Yes, and I can definitely attest to that. It's very conflicting. New process, same problems. Absolutely. So we were all in the same boat. We were so excited about embracing lean and using the tools and enjoying this new way of problem solving that it felt really frustrating and demoralizing and exhausting. I keep seeing that word pop up from time to time, to not be able to get the outcomes that we were looking for. So we really had to think about this a little bit differently. And this is when we started to evolve. Next slide, please. What we're showing here is a visual of what we've come to learn throughout these many years of trial and error. At the center, or the core of the circle, is the idea of continuous improvement. The rings around that center are a combination of the technical side, which could be traditional project management, Lean Six Sigma, PDCA, insert your methodology here, right? And then what I like to call the blanket. The blanket is the outermost ring and wraps around the more technical approach, focusing on the people side of improvement. In a nutshell, that blanket is change management. The definition of change management is the application of a structured process and set of tools for leading the people side of change to achieve a desired outcome, that people side focus. When we started hearing about change management, it was like a light bulb going on, and we knew that this could be the key to obtaining better outcomes. Why? Because we'd seen the other approach in action. We'd seen the focus on the technical side. We were coming up with great ideas to improve our processes, but we just couldn't get our folks to buy in and implement the changes. Or if they did, even for a short time, sometimes we couldn't keep them from going back to business as usual. When that happens, it's really hard to get the outcomes you were looking for. Just like we love lean and project management because they provide that structure and tools for working through problem solving, the idea of change management and having a logical thought process to go through to help staff accept and adopt change was enlightening. Again, there are probably a million different disciplines that you could plug into this visual, but for our organization, we focused on the ProSci methodology, and more specifically, the ADKAR model. Rachel and I, like we mentioned, are both ProSci certified change practitioners. So we've really taken that knowledge and tried to incorporate it into the work that we do. So here is an overview of what we're talking about. I really like this visual because you can see here how the following disciplines line up and in some cases overlap. At the top of the slide, you have the technical side of improvement, which encompasses both lean and project management. The top row focuses on Lean Six Sigma and the phases of the DMAIC. We use the DMAIC framework in our problem solving, and it's yet another acronym that stands for define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Within each phase of the DMAIC, there are multiple tools you can use to help you do the following. So really define your problem, support your problem with data, analyze the root causes of those issues, brainstorm your solutions and hopefully choose the best ones, and then standardize those improvements. Below the DMAIC, you will see the more traditional project management method of initiate, plan, execute, monitor, and control. Again, there are tools that you can use within each of these phases to help you move through the life cycle of your project or problem-solving event. But you can see here how these two methodologies line up nicely and complement each other. At the bottom of the visual is the people side of improvement or change management. And this is where we bring in the model that I talked about just a couple of slides ago, the ADKAR. ADKAR stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So here's where we've created a visual reminder of how and where you can incorporate both the people side of change and the technical side of change throughout your project. We use these change management principles to help communicate both the project itself from its original inception, and then more specifically, the actual process change that might come out of the work group. So now we're going to dig just a little bit deeper into the integration for each of these methodologies. So here you can see we are looking at each phase individually. The visual is broken into separate columns from left to right, where we've identified the phases for lean, then project management, then change management. To the right of the columns, you will see corresponding colors and icons explaining each of these phases by either tools, logistics, or people. For our purposes, tools refers to the lean framework of the DMAIC, the wrench and the screwdriver icon. Logistics refers to project management, the cog and wheel. And of course, people refers to change management with our cute little people in that circle. This visual will be consistent throughout the rest of the presentation. What we're trying to show you again is how these different disciplines support and contribute to each step in your project or problem solving for better outcomes in the long run. So you can see the alignment of the define stage from lean and the initiate stage from project management. They're happening basically at the same time. It's just different words for doing the same kinds of things. It's pretty self-explanatory. These are the phases where you focus on defining your problem or project. But here's where there's an opportunity to go one step further and bring change management into the picture by creating awareness that the problem even exists. It sounds so simple, but it's a step that we sometimes miss until the work group is done. And that's where we run into issues. On the technical side, we can use many tools to help us define or initiate the project. We've thrown a couple of examples of our favorite tools that we use when we're in the define stage, such as the voice of the customer, the Gemba walk. We're not really going to dig any deeper into the details of how to use the tools, as that would take way more time than we have today. But I'd like to open up the chat again and offer an opportunity for you to share what tools you use in your organization to help define your problem. What other tools do you guys use? Miro, we wish. Any other lean or project management tools that you use to help define your project or your problem? I'm seeing SIPOC, 7-step problem solving tool, the A3, Kanban, evaluation surveys. I love it. Voice of the customer, basically. Mapping, A3, absolutely. Survey Monkey, yes. 5 Whys, we've got all sorts of things. KPIs first. Key performance indicators, yes. Transformational scenario planning, that sounds super exciting. I'd love to hear more about that. Yes, all right. So lots of great ways that you guys start your problems off and really define what those issues are and hopefully get a really good problem statement going. So thank you for sharing lots of great information. Before we started incorporating this last piece of change management into our improvement projects, we were really more focused on the tools than on communicating the potential change. We were doing a great job of communicating within our work groups, but this really helped us to understand that even this early in a project, we should be building awareness beyond the project group and communicating the why. All right, let's move on to measure. As we move on to measure, we identify a phase that we have worked so hard to incorporate. And I don't know about you, but it has been difficult and a learning process as we've gone through our journey here. This is still an area that we struggle with from time to time, especially when we're talking about qualitative data. It's not impossible to gather, but it does take a much more thoughtful approach, and it takes longer when you're trying to gather that data in a different way and make it quantitative. It can be time consuming, and extra time isn't always something that we have a lot of. So let's open up the chat again and see why you think gathering metrics is important to continuous improvement projects. Why do we need to do that? How do the metrics help you? To know where you are, to measure, to track progress, absolutely. We can only improve what we can measure, I love that. Data-driven decision-making, reinforcement, measuring success when it's done. To see if you're meeting the requirements, absolutely. Verify that the problem is occurring, gold star for that one, absolutely. To see if something really is a problem, another gold star. Finding waste, to know where to focus our time. This is exactly right. This measure piece is so important. And when we're talking about measure and plan here, this technical side again, we're really focusing on gathering that data to support our problem statement. And as a lot of you have mentioned in the chat here, sometimes we end up having to tweak our problem statement because maybe the data doesn't support the problem that we thought was out there. So this is such an important step in our process to make sure that we're creating that current baseline and then really able to show progress from there. So it's in these first two stages of define and measure, initiate and plan, that the majority of the work is being done and the majority of the time is being taken. You're coordinating logistics, you're figuring out the schedule and the resources that you need, you're finalizing your charter or other guiding documents, and all of this work that takes so much time and effort really pans out in the end, right? But this is also a good time to start thinking about the second stage of ADKAR, which is desire. So at this point, you're not necessarily going to have your action plan items brainstormed. You're not going to be ready to move forward with those. You might not have the specific change in mind, but you're really using this methodology to prepare people. Desire is where you work to get your stakeholders to support or participate in the change, and how you can answer the what's in it for me. The data that you get in the measure and plan stage can be critical for this step. Providing tangible proof why something is a problem and needs to be fixed can be enough to get folks on board. The what's in it for me may be as simple as increasing accuracy. The data shows that your accuracy is poor, and so folks don't like the idea of not doing a good job. And this is where other lean principles come into play. Having the right people in the room, the people who do the work, working on the solution, should help you brainstorm on how to get others to buy into the change. They're going to give you that insider information of, how can we get people to buy in? How can we get people on board? Okay, I know that we haven't gotten through all of the phases yet, But I am going to pass this over to Rachel now, and she's going to walk us through some templates that we use in DCS to help us incorporate change management with our improvement work groups. We've talked about incorporating change management from the very beginning, and you could use these templates in that way, adding information as you gather it. The important thing is that you start thinking about how, what, and who you need to communicate with at the start. The example that we're going to walk you through actually focuses on an action item that came out of a work group so that you can see us fill it out more completely. But just remember, we want you guys to be doing this early on in your process. So Rachel, take it away.
Okay, here we go. We created this change management canvas as a way to help our lean practitioners incorporate change management into their smaller scale projects that don't require a change manager. We're going to demonstrate how to use the canvas using a change that is happening at our agency. Typically, we'd be completing these with our work groups that have voices represented from across our diverse workforce, but today we'll be asking for input from our diverse audience. So when the time comes, please drop your ideas into the chat and you can follow along with the template attached to the presentation. Before we get started, let's talk a little bit about what's happening here. This is a real problem with real data we've borrowed for this presentation. Although this is specific to our business, we've taken out the details to make it more relatable across the board. So here's the situation. Several months ago, a new policy was implemented, adding a couple of steps in the process to establish child support in certain cases. During a standard office-wide audit of the entire establishment process, it was discovered that a 65% average accuracy rate for this new process. One of our recent Greenbelt graduates used this as her capstone project, and one of the countermeasures that came out of her work group was required refresher training. So this is the change we will be using for the Canvas. So this is our Canvas. I've already added some details, like our change is the required refresher trainings. And the problem is the average accuracy rate is at 65% for the new process. Let's start with measurements. How will we measure our progress towards success? Go ahead and put some ideas in the chat.
I'm seeing self-audits, feedback, surveys, metrics showing an increase in accuracy, percentage compliance improvement, time studies, increase in accuracy, workforce equity studies. Great information in the chat.
All right, just typing in a few of these. All right. Now, what should our goal be? We like to use SMART goals. This stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So we want something that pulls in our data and has a deadline. Don't overthink this part. What do you think might be a reasonable goal for improvement? There's no right or wrong answer here.
I'm seeing a 20% increase in accuracy in 6 months. Increase accuracy from 65 to 80 in 6 months. You guys have you've had some practice writing SMART goals.
Yeah.
Great job. Accuracy
Increased by 20% in 6 months. That's pretty specific, and it has data in there.
Oh, I'm seeing something else that's a different goal related more to the change. 100% training attendance.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah, that is a good one.
We've got a lot of 20% increase in 6 months. they think that we can do better.
We can do better. All right, let's go to importance. This is importance to staff and to the business. How the change impacts our customers can be just as important to staff as what's in it for them. In this case, the business impact, or big why, is that if the process isn't completed correctly, it delays support to families. Sometimes hearing that is enough for staff to want to make the change. Other times they may need more motivation by way of personal benefit. As a staff person, what would it take for you to support this new refresher training?
We already have someone who's jumped the gun. I love this. Causes rework to correct accuracy issues. Efficiency. We want to do it right the first time. Customer service. Accountability. Absolutely. Removes frustration with and stigma of the agency. Absolutely. So we're looking at our customer viewpoint there. Avoidance of adverse audit. There's a million here, Rachel. When you don't have enough room, you just stop. But I'm reading them out because these are great.
All right, well, I've run out of room, so I'm moving on.
Pride in your job. I love that.
Yes, that is good. I love that. All right, next is who and what is affected. This is anyone impacted by the change. This would be your stakeholders, process owners, and internal and external customers. Since this problem is specific to our business, I've already added our affected parties as our support enforcement officers because they will have to attend the training, and our trainers because they will have to develop and deliver the training. Next, we're going to start planning some change management activities, and we're going to pull from the information we've already plugged in to help us out. First up is awareness. We want our people to be able to say that they understand why required refresher training is needed. Part of this is being able to show that a problem exists. Using the information we already have on the Canvas, what can we communicate? Put your ideas in the chat.
The current accuracy rate, so that 65%. Yes,
Okay,
that would
good.
be great. It's needed so that all staff are on the same page for all customers, no matter who they work with. The impact to clients could be a part of this awareness piece. Measurements and importance. They're basically saying we can pull from those two buckets. Absolutely. Due to inaccurate accuracy and processing claims, families in Washington state are not getting their needs met. The fact that training is required and include a solution is available. Reducing reworks. Info about the training, number of hours, etc. I love that. We like the info.
Okay, I only have a little tiny space. Going with the 65% and the impact to clients.
Oh,
All
I
right.
do like this one though. I'm sorry, Rachel, I got to throw this in there. Make a competition for teams, increasing their accuracy. You know how I love teams and competition.
You love competition. That would definitely get you going.
Yes, it would.
All right, knowledge. This is learning how to actually do the new process, which the training will cover. They need to understand how to change and make sure they learn the new process. What can we do to make sure that happens?
Did we skip over desire?
Did we skip over desire?
Yes.
Sorry, one
That's
second.
okay. So somebody is saying job aids for the knowledge. Yeah, that would be great. Anything else? How can we make sure that people have the knowledge they need? Team leader, make sure that it keeps going. Process documented and checklists, pre and post tests. Training itself, absolutely.
Checklists.
Knowledge check-ins. Info for supervisors to help enforce knowledge individually. That's a great one.
That is a great one.
And that's from Devin. Some folks we recognize.
Yay, Devin.
Peer-to-peer practice, love that. Peer support. Great ideas.
All right, if I type any more, my letters are going to get super teeny tiny and you won't be able to read it. All right, I'm going to backtrack to desire now since we skipped over it. So we want to hear that staff have decided to take the refresher training. So we're going to pull right from the importance box on this one to start communicating the with them or the what's in it for me. But this is also where we could communicate the consequences for not changing. Desire is a personal choice and staff are going to weigh both the benefits and the consequences when they either decide to support the change or resist the change. So what could be some of the potential benefits and consequences?
Less rework. Have a conversation with your staff to find out what they think is in it for them. That's a great strategy for sure. Less frustration, higher accuracy rate might be enough. More free time for other things. Less confrontation with unhappy customers. Yes, please.
Yes.
Great ideas. Pride in work, again, that's great. Morale boosters like candy, that might be coming in a little bit later, but I like the way you think. I like competition and I like candy. Self-satisfaction, less complaints. Yeah, lots of great ideas here.
All right, let's move on to ability. We want staff to be able to say they are able to do the new process. Sometimes people get hung up between knowledge and ability because they seem really similar. Knowledge is like reading the instruction manual, and ability is like successfully assembling the thing. Knowledge gives you the know-how, and ability is the proof that you have the tools, resources, and skill to implement the change. So what can we do to check on their ability to do the process correctly?
Pilots, a game, have them walk through the process. So basically prove they can do it. Check one-on-one. Check the data, see if there's a difference in the data. Teach backs, we love the teach backs. Have them walk through the new process, make sure they know what that looks like. Nice, have them demonstrate their knowledge by training another person.
I like that.
I do too, that is awesome. Audit forms to check for accuracy. Yep.
My text got really teeny tiny, but I had to put teach backs in there. We do love teach backs. All right, lastly is reinforcement. We want to hear that staff are going to continue using the new process. In order for this to happen, we need to have a system in place to prevent backsliding. Most of the time, backsliding occurs because the old way is easier and no one checks up on us to make sure we're still doing it the new way. So what can we do to prevent backsliding?
Follow up. Show those candy, love it.
I saw that giant.
Set checkpoints. I like that. Add it to annual evals. That could be a reinforcement piece. They're coming in fast and furious, so I'm just calling out a couple. Celebrate and showcase improvements. Share positive customer feedback or kudos. These are all great. Maybe in an all staff acknowledging the good job that's been done. Love it.
Awesome ideas. All right, the last piece of the canvas is used to plan when you would do each change management activity based on where you're at in your project. Creating a visual timeline can be very helpful to keep you on track and also provide valuable information to your sponsor. We're not going to complete this part together since we're just borrowing this change as an example and not actually implementing it. We have found that using the change management canvas has provided us with a great start to developing a communication plan. We've used the same change management principles and incorporated them into our standard communication plan template. This helps to encourage our lean practitioners to communicate through a change management lens by breaking down the communication into each phase of the ADKAR and providing reminders about the goals and activities of each phase. We're going to continue on with the same scenario to demonstrate how to use the communication plan. The communication plan can be used in conjunction with the canvas or on its own. Since we've already brainstormed some ADKAR activities, I went ahead and moved them over to the communication plan to show you how these tools can work together. For the sake of time, we're just going to complete the awareness and desire pieces together so you'll have an example to take with you. And again, as we work through it, we'll have you put your ideas in the chat and you can follow along with the template attached to the presentation. So let's get started. Starting with awareness and pulling from the canvas, we had that 65% accuracy rate and then the impact that it had towards the clients. The purpose of awareness is to communicate the nature of the change, why the change is happening, and the risk for not changing. So we need to weave that into the message. When you're completing the communication plan, you don't need to worry about the composed message, just the main points that need to be addressed. Let's talk about method. We're talking about how we're getting the message out there. We can also use method to consider EDI and accessibility. Use your work group members and subject matter experts to ensure you're communicating with staff in a way they can be communicated with. What ideas do you have for communication methods?
We have emails, staff meetings, huddles, one-on-ones, all staff, SharePoint, bulletin boards. Aha, somebody has read ahead. The right sender providing the information. They know their change management. Press releases, stakeholder newsletters, stand-ups, policy calls. Lots of great ideas here.
Lots of ideas. All right, let's move on to audience. Who are we communicating this message to?
Who needs to know about this change? The staff doing the work and the clients that are affected potentially. Managers and employees. Everyone affected by the change, absolutely. Those impacted. Stakeholders, leadership. Yes.
All right.
All staff, no matter the job title. Love it.
So for the delivery date, you'll decide the specific date for your sender to deliver the message depending on where you are in your project. So we're not really going to worry about that for this. The content of the message determines who the sender should be. Messages about why a change is happening, the risk if we don't change, what our goals and vision are for the change should come from upper level management. So your sponsor needs to be sending those messages. Messages about what the change means for staff, what's in it for them, and how it will impact them should come from their direct supervisors. So based on our awareness messages, who should communicate them?
From the top down with check-ins to ensure that all people actually get the message. Ditto. Absolutely. Staff trainers, yep, they need to know, right? Subject matter experts.
All right, let's go to desire. From the Canvas, we had less rework, higher accuracy rate, and pride in work. Again, this is all about what's in it for staff. We want to lay out the benefits and consequences for them to make that personal choice. What is the best method to deliver this message?
What's the best way to get this message across? Would we do it the same as we did for awareness? Emails, meetings, huddles, in-person meetings? It could be same method as awareness. I like the in-person, especially when we're talking about the what's in it for me. Transparency and information. Yeah, know your audience and meet them where they are. I think that that's such an important takeaway here when you're talking about being able to communicate the what's in it for me. In person with writing, covering all our bases. I love it. I really like this. Nancy says in person sometimes goes over easier in an informal setting. I like that.
All right, and who would our audience be for this message?
All the staff doing the work. Yep.
Same as above.
Yep. All staff.
And again, with the delivery date would be decided depending on where you guys are at with your projects. Who would be the best person to send this message?
Supervisors, yes. Supervisors, when we're talking about the what's in it for me, when we're talking about, trying to get that buy-in, the soups are the best sender of that information, but it is nice to have all management on board for sure. Great.
All right. I'm going to pass it back to Janina now to walk through the final phases.
Thank you, everybody, for playing along with our templates there and helping us complete them. A little hands-on application is always a good thing, so I hope that that was helpful for you. And I hope that the templates help you see how you can use both the technical side and also the people side. You can keep that at the forefront in your mind when you're working through a project. Now we're going to finish up with the last couple of phases before we open it up for questions. Rachel, can you advance. Thank you. So up next is the analyze phase, and you can see that we've moved into the execute phase of project management, but still remain in the desire phase for change management. As we work through analyze using our fishbone or 5 whys to determine the root cause of the problem, we're really preparing for brainstorming countermeasures. The outcomes from this phase could be useful as you continue to communicate out to stakeholders. One way that we like to capture important points from our work group meetings is by creating talking points. Again, just a nice, easy tool to use. They're agreed upon by the entire work group to make sure that the messaging is consistent and appropriate. Sometimes where we get into trouble is, we share too much information, every idea, every thought that the work group has. We don't need to send that out to the larger group of staff, but really important details can be useful when you're trying to get buy-in. And again, so long as it's consistent messaging, that can be really helpful for your group. All right, next slide, please. So now we're moving on to improve. And we see here, again, we're in the execute stage for project management. This stage is the most fun. It's the most exciting and the one where we really feel the energy pick up by the work group members. This is where all of the hard work, the data gathering, the planning, all of that really pays off. It's where we get to take a look at our root causes and start coming up with real action plans to fix the problem. We like to use the PIC, a prioritization matrix that helps make sure any action plans we want to recommend moving forward are within our scope and boundaries. We use the criteria of impact and feasibility to help plot those on the PIC chart, and then try to really focus on the items that have both high impact and high feasibility that are in our implement category, so that we're not necessarily picking the most popular idea, but we're really picking the best idea for the situation that we have. As we look at change management here, this is where both knowledge and ability come into play. And remember, although they seem really similar, they are different. Knowledge is, again, that piece of knowing what you're supposed to do, like understanding the new process, but ability is being able to actually do it. We need to make sure that when we're communicating out both the action plans, which could include a new way of doing a process, that we're also communicating how we're going to kind of check back on folks to make sure that they have the ability to perform the work in a new way. It's another way of incorporating PDCA into your project, but instead of looking at just the hard numbers, the final details, did you reach your goal? What's your accuracy rate? We're also looking at the people side. Are they successful in implementing the change? And if not, why not? So this makes me think of a couple of projects that we've had in our own organization. Excuse me as I trip over those words. We had a large improvement project that we did, and it was something that took a manual process, a paper manual process. And we went through this entire improvement project, and we ended up creating a electronic process, right? And it all sounded great and looked great on paper, and it was going to increase efficiency and do all of these things. And it was fantastic. And everybody was on board right up until the ability piece. We had some folks that were really struggling with learning the new process. They knew it in their head, but when they actually went to do it virtually, electronically, they were really struggling. It was cumbersome to them. It was slow. It was, they were confused. They didn't feel like they were doing a good job. And that's when we saw some backsliding happen. So if you're not going back and doing that check back piece, making sure that the ability is there, you can get into trouble, right? This is where things can go downhill, and that's when we don't see those outcomes that we're hoping to see. So we've got improve, and now please go to that next slide. Our last phase is the control integration. And here is the final phase of the DMAIC. This is the control phase, and it aligns with the monitor and control phases of project management, and also where we see the reinforcement for change management. You guys came up with a ton of great ideas for reinforcement. Candy is my favorite. Thank you very much. But lots of great ideas for how you can check back in and make sure that people are still doing the change in the appropriate way. In this control phase for the DMAIC, you might use a RACI chart or an implementation plan to track progress and standardize improvements. But again, this reinforcement piece is where the rubber really hits the road. This is where you celebrate your successes. This could also be where you're holding people accountable, right? Because sometimes they see the light and sometimes they need to feel the heat in order to adopt that change. But holding folks accountable to the consequences of not making the change is also an important piece in the reinforcement. A lot of times the reinforcement piece becomes a part of your action planning. You can actually put it into your items. You can create action items that build reinforcement into them, as in a part of our improvement is that we are going to add in audits, and we're going to come back and we're going to check that people are doing it correctly. And we're going to hold regular one-on-ones or whatever that might look like. So, this is one of the most important phases for change management to prevent that backsliding and make sure that the change is being adopted and moved forward with. Okay, so that is all we have for you today. I hope you've been able to pick up one or two nuggets to take back to your own organizations. Again, we love templates because they keep all of these things in the forefront. They're a reminder to us to do our bits and pieces. Sometimes we get into the process and we lose ourselves a little bit. So our templates are our friends. But if there are any questions, feel free. I know folks have been typing them into the Q&A. So Christy, are there any questions for us?
Yes. So let's see here. There was a question when you were covering the change management canvas. What sort of information should go in that timeline?
In the timeline? So that's a great question. And the reason why we didn't go over it is because we don't have a real project that we're talking about in this sense. But what should go in there are dates and what you're going to be doing, right? So if you are at the very early onset stage of your project, you're still defining your problem, maybe you put in there that you're going to do an all staff email just to give everyone a heads up and a date associated with that. And then you can go through that timeline and kind of track those next steps so that you're doing your project work and also the change management work is kind of happening all at the same time. Hopefully that answers that question.
All right. What are some first? Yes, thank you. What are some first change management into their work?
I'm sorry, one more time.
What are some first steps that folks can do to start incorporating change management into their work?
For us, so like I said, we attended a training for change management. I know that there's lots of great courses through DES, through DSHS. You can go in and find out more about change management and learn the concepts around them. ProSci is the methodology that we have learned, but there are other things that are out there. It's really just about finding a structure or a format that resonates with you to keep you doing the steps that you need to do to be communicating with the right people at the right time. So lots of resources out there. I would say definitely just go take a look at, any of your agencies around that might have some kind of training available.
So it looks like we have a technical
Awesome.
challenge.
Well,
And
thank you so much, Janina and Rachel.
Thank you.
looks like we're having a technical issue on Christy's
Am I
side.
still lagging?
And so thank you for attending today, Janina and Rachel. Thank you so much for presenting today. We really appreciate you being here and for wrapping up today's session. And we have one more session for the day before the conference ends. So thank you all very much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.